We're going hunting today. He leaped up and onto her bedspread. Hunting, hunting, hunting. He warbled away happily as he bounced up and down. Embla couldn't help laughing. He was always full of energy, but right now, the dial was turned up to maximum. Okay. Off you go to the bathroom. Then put on the clothes I've left on the chair in the hall. She didn't get any further. He was already on his way to the tiny ensuite bathroom. Elliot was the best thing to come out of Embla's relationship with Jason Abbott, a jazz musician. They'd split up almost 5 years ago after a series of excoriating rows about Jason's inability to remain faithful. But a deep bond had grown between Embla and Jason's son, Elliot, which his father had sensibly chosen to nurture. Needless to say, he had seen the value of having an adult around who was willing to help out. Elliot's mother had died before he was 1 year old, and the boy's only close relations in Sweden were a divorced maternal aunt and her 3 children. But she already had her hands full. Embla stayed under the covers for a little longer, trying to shake off the fear that still sat in the middle of her chest, like a hard knot. Over the past week, the nightmare had haunted her every night. The reason was obvious. Her childhood best friend, Louise, who went by Lollo and had disappeared 14.5 years ago, had suddenly gotten in touch. Late on Friday night, 8 days ago, Embla's phone had trilled the opening bars of the original 1977 Star Wars soundtrack. She'd been annoyed because she'd just broken up with Nadir and assumed it was him calling. Warily, she'd answered, "Embla Nyström?" No one said anything, but she could hear shallow breathing and a faint rushing in the background, as if the person on the other end was far away, or standing by the sea. "Hello? Who is this?" There was a sharp intake of breath. Then a female voice whispered, "Oh, Osa. Is that Osa?" The hairs on the back of her neck had stood on end. Nobody had called her Osa in years. Everyone called her Embla these days, which was her given name. But when she was little, she'd hated it because it was so unusual, and she'd persuaded all her friends and teachers to use her middle name, Osa. As an adult, she'd started to prefer Embla, and switched back. But someone who hadn't seen her since she was a teenager couldn't possibly know that. And the person on the other end of the phone hadn't seen her for 14.5 years. She was certain of that, because she recognized the voice. Lollo, she managed eventually. There was a gasp, and the connection was broken. Her initial reaction had been shock, but after a while she had pulled herself together and began to process the realization that her friend was still alive. So many questions whirled around in her mind. Where was Lollo? Was she in danger? Would she get in touch again? Why had she called? Embla had decided to finally tell someone everything she knew about that night. There was only one person she could bring herself to share her trauma with. Her former boss, Superintendent Göran Krantz, head of the technical department at Police HQ in Gothenburg. She'd called him and told him the whole story. Her best friend had disappeared one night when they were both 14 years old. Embla had gotten seriously drunk for the first and only time. The only thing she remembered was the scene that constantly replayed in her nightmare. The 3 men bending over Lollo, the grip on her throat, the death threat, the sense of impotence, the guilt. As Embla and Elliot planned to travel to Dalsland the following morning for the school break, she and Göran had agreed to meet up as soon as she returned to Gothenburg. While she was away, he would try to take a closer look at the case notes surrounding Louise's disappearance, if time allowed. If Louise got in touch again, Embla was to contact Göran right away, and he would do his best to trace the call. Embla was glad she'd spoken to him. It had felt good to know that he'd taken her seriously and was going to help her find out what had recently happened to Lollo. Ever since that phone call, Embla had gone...